On June 6, 1944, the sands of Omaha Beach were set to become one of the bloodiest battlefields of World War II. For the American soldiers of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, hitting this 5-mile stretch of Normandy coast was like charging into a meat grinder. The Germans had spent years turning Omaha into a fortress. Steep bluffs overlooked the entire beach, giving defenders a perfect vantage point. Atop these bluffs, a network of concrete bunkers, known as Widerstandszenster, housed machine guns, anti-tank guns, and artillery, the infamous MG-42 machine guns. Nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw, could spit out 1,200 rounds per minute, creating impenetrable walls of lead. The fields of fire from these positions were meticulously planned to overlap, ensuring no part of the beach was left uncovered. Below the bluffs, the Germans had layered a deadly assortment of obstacles: steel hedgehogs, wooden ramps tipped with mines, and fields of barbed wire were all designed to funnel the invading troops into pre-sighted killing zones. This was the Atlantic Wall, and at Omaha, it was at its most formidable. As the landing craft doors dropped, the full horror of the situation became immediately apparent. The men were met with a storm of machine gun and artillery fire. Many were cut down before they even left the ramps. The initial waves were decimated. Soldiers, weighed down by nearly 100 pounds of gear, struggled through the surf and across the wide-open beach with absolutely no cover. The meticulously planned assault began to unravel. The pre-landing naval and aerial bombardment had been largely ineffective, failing to neutralize the key German strength. The specialized DDR duplex-drive amphibious tanks, meant to provide crucial fire support, met with disaster. Launched too far from shore in rough seas, Vinci Sechav, the 29 tanks assigned to the first wave, sank, taking their crews with them. The few that made it ashore were quickly knocked out by anti-tank guns. The infantry were left almost entirely on their own, pinned down at the water's edge by a relentless hail of fire. Bogies and burning equipment littered the tide line. The situation was so dire that General Omar Bradley, observing from a ship offshore, seriously considered evacuating the beach and redirecting the remaining forces. Omaha was on the verge of becoming a catastrophic failure. Yet, amidst the chaos and carnage, small acts of incredible bravery and initiative began to turn the tide. This wasn't a battle won by grand strategy from the top, but by the sheer grit and determination of individual soldiers and small units on the ground. Pinned down and facing annihilation, leaders emerged. Men like Captain Joseph Dodson of G Company, 16th Infantry, realized that staying on the beach meant certain death. He and his men knew the only way out was up. Under withering fire, they began the treacherous climb up the bluffs, exploiting any small crease or gully for cover. It was a slow, agonizing process. They had to cut through wire, crawl on their bellies, and constantly hug the earth to avoid the streams of machine gun fire. But they kept moving, driven by the simple, brutal logic of survival. This is where the combat engineers became the unsung heroes of Omaha. These men had one of the most dangerous jobs on to clear paths through the German obstacles while fully exposed to enemy fire, carrying heavy loads of explosives, wire cutters, and Bangalore torpedo-slung pipes filled with explosives used to clear wire and mines. They worked methodically amidst the slaughter. Many were killed or wounded, but they succeeded in blowing gaps in the barbed wire and clearing lanes through the minefields. These small breaches were lifelines. They provided the infantry with the narrow channels they needed to finally get off the beach and begin their assault on the bluffs. Without the sacrifice of these engineers, the infantry would have remained trapped in the killing zone below. As small groups of American soldiers reached the base of the bluffs, they began a different kind of fight. They couldn't assault the German bunkers head-on. The front-facing machine gun embrasures were too well protected. Instead, they had to improvise, using the terrain for cover. They worked their way around to the flanks and rear of the fortifications. This was close-quarters combat at its most brutal. They used a combination of weapons and tactics to neutralize the bunkers one by one. Soldiers would lay down suppressive fire on the bunkers' openings, allowing a small assault team to creep forward. Once close enough, they would toss grenades through the firing slits or ventilation shafts. Flamethrowers were terrifyingly effective, shooting liquid fire into the bunkers and forcing the defenders to either surrender or be incinerated. For the most heavily fortified positions, soldiers used satchel charges and other high explosives, placing them against the rear entrances or weaker points of the concrete structures and blasting their way in. It was a painstaking, bunker-by-bunker fight up the ravines and draws that cut through the bluffs. At the same time, a critical element of support came from the sea. The captains of U.S. Navy destroyers, seeing the desperate situation on the beach, made a daring decision. They brought their ships dangerously close to the shore, risking running aground or hitting mines. This allowed their 5-inch guns to engage in direct fire against the German bunkers. The naval gunfire liaison teams on the beach, often operating under intense fire, called in targets with incredible precision. A destroyer's shell hitting a concrete bunker could have a devastating effect, either destroying it outright or stunning the occupants long enough for the infantry to storm it. This iron cavalry from the sea provided the heavy firepower that the infantry so desperately lacked. The combination of naval gunfire smashing the bunkers from the front and infantry teams assaulting them from the rear proved to be a deadly one-two punch. Slowly but surely, the American forces began to gain a foothold. By midday, small but growing groups of soldiers had fought their way to the top of the bluffs and were beginning to clear out the trench systems that connected the bunkers. The momentum was shifting. As more troops and vehicles were able to land and move inland through the cleared gaps, the German defense system began to crumble from within. The defenders, often isolated in their bunkers, were overwhelmed by attacks from multiple directions. By the end of the day, the Americans had secured the beachhead, albeit at a terrible cost. Over 2,000 American soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing on Omaha Beach that day, the highest casualty rate of any of the D-Day landing beaches. The victory at Omaha Beach was not a clean or easy one. It wasn't won through superior technology or a brilliant, flawlessly executed plan. It was a victory forged in fire, blood, and sacrifice. It was won by the improvisation of junior officers and NCOs who refused to give up, the raw courage of combat engineers clearing paths under fire, the tenacity of infantrymen crawling up the bluffs, and the audacity of Navy destroyers sailing into harm's way. The breakthrough was a testament to the resilience of the individual soldier when faced with seemingly impossible odds. It was a chaotic, brutal, and costly success that demonstrated the sheer human will required to punch through Hitler's Atlantic Wall and begin the liberation of Europe. The story of Omaha is a powerful reminder that victory in war is often paid for with immense human suffering and extraordinary bravery. Thank you for watching. If you found this piece of history compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into pivotal military events. We'll see you in the next one.